Well, we have gotten to the commandment you've all been waiting for, the sixth commandment. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Seems to always have a lot of interest. And the first question that the Youcat brings up is one that's really a very interesting question. And part of the answer that's given is, I think, one of the most interesting things I found in the whole Youcat. The question is number 400, which is on page 218. What does it mean to say that man is a sexual being? Well, the simple answer to that is in the first sentence. God created man as male and female. He created them for each other and for love. But what I wanted to look at was something that goes in the paragraph that explains this a little bit more. Because it talks about the idea that being a man or being a woman, that our sexual identity is not just a matter of that's important in how we relate to one another merely in the sexual area, but really has a lot to do with who we are. And this is what in this extended answer to question 400 says. Being a man or being a woman is very deeply imprinted on the individual human person. It's not just an accident. A lot of people would say to you, oh, there's really not any difference between being a man or a woman. These are just kind of accidental things. The difference in being a man or being a woman is it's a different way of feeling. Women and men feel things in different ways. A different way of loving. Men and women love and receive love in different ways. A different calling with respect to children. Another way of believing. Now that is a really profound statement, that your relationship to God even is different because you are a man or because you are a woman. Men and women respond to God. Men and women believe in different ways. And so this difference and this complementarity of the sexes is not something that's just limited off to one small portion of our lives, but is really about who we are in the totality of our being. And really this lies at the root of basically the lie that this world tells us about sexual activity, and that is that it's just this little part of life, and what you do in that little part doesn't really matter, and it doesn't really, your sexuality doesn't really affect anything else. And right off the bat, the answer to this first question, that we are sexual beings, the Youcat, the church through the Youcat is teaching us that no, this is something that's really fundamental to being a man or being a woman. Being a man or being a woman are different ways of being human beings. Of course, completely equal in dignity. Now that's always a danger when we say that there is this difference in complementarity between the sexes, that somehow one is superior to the other. And that's certainly not true. There is complete equality in our dignity as human beings. But that equality does not imply a uniformity, and that's really in question 401. And then we jump right into another incredibly fundamental question, and that is question 402. What is love? You ever wondered that? I know I sure have. I think every human being who has ever lived, that's been one of the most fundamental questions they've ever dealt with, is what is love? And this is the very simple, straightforward, direct answer that we get. Love is the free self-giving of the heart. The free self-giving, giving of self, not taking, but giving of self of the heart. When we look at this area, I don't think the church has a more fantastic teacher, I really should say, than Blessed John Paul the Great. And so I want to share with you a few quotations that that he gives to us. Sexuality, by means of which man and woman give themselves to one another through the acts which are proper and exclusive to spouses, is by no means something purely biological, but concerns the innermost being of the human person as such. It is realized in a truly human way only if it is an integral part of the love by which a man and a woman commit themselves totally to one another until death. The total physical self-giving would be a lie if it were not the sign and fruit of a total personal self-giving. You see how Pope John Paul there is developing this idea that our being, sexual beings, has to do with the totality of our being, and not just limited to this one small little area of activity. Love is something that is, there is something no more profound, and also, frankly, no more demanding than love. I'd like to share with you one of my favorite quotations, really, from all of the scriptures, from the Song of Songs. Again, it's in one of those bars down the side of the Youcat, in this case on the page 218. Set me as a seal upon your heart, as a seal upon your arm, for love is strong as death. Jealousy is cruel as the grave. It flashes or flashes of fire, a most vehement flame. Many waters cannot quench love, neither can floods drown it. If a man offered for love all the wealth of his house, it would be utterly scorned. Love is strong as death. And so we want to always see that sexuality always has to be related and expressed within love, this self-giving. It's never something, our sexuality can never be expressed in a coercive way, in a selfish way, in a grasping way, in a way that is divorced from these demands of total self-giving love that we hear in the writings of Pope John Paul and in the scriptures. And so if any sort of sexual gratification is sought apart from love or separated from love, then it completely destroys what the meaning of the sexual act is to be, which is to be a demonstration on the physical level of that total commitment, that total self-giving, that total emptying and union of life that is brought about by love. And so this is really the demand, is how to integrate our sexuality into the demands of love, into the fulfillment and richness of love. And we have a particular virtue that helps us to do this. It is the virtue, it's called chastity, and that's what question 404 takes up. What is chaste love? Why should a Christian have a chaste love? And I think this is, again, a very powerful and positive way that this virtue is given to us. A lot of times I think when we maybe think of the virtue of chastity, we think of it as a bunch of do's and don'ts. But listen to this answer. A chaste love is a love that defends itself against all the internal and external forces that might destroy it. A person who lives chastely is not the plaything of his lusts, but rather lives his sexuality deliberately, motivated by love, and as an expression of that love. That really is a pretty radical idea. Let me look back at that sentence just again for a moment with you. One who is chaste lives his sexuality deliberately. Now, isn't that sort of a radical idea? Aren't we taught that really, sexuality is supposed to be one of those things that doesn't have any kind of rules to it? I mean, I think that's what our popular culture would want to tell us. But no, that we really have some thoughtfulness about it. that it's motivated by love and an expression of that love that we were talking about, that is, that's really sterner than death, that's about freedom and self-giving and never taking and grasping. And so we see that this concept of love and sexuality integrated always with love is something that calls us to this virtue of chastity. But how do we do that? It sounds pretty tough. It is. Can anybody live a chaste life? That's question 405, and that's a good question. And I would like to listen to a couple of the sentences in answer to that. Someone lives chastely when he is free to be loving and is not the slave of his drives and emotions. Wow. A chaste person is the person who is free to love. Not to take or to snatch or to grab, but really to live a life that's self-giving. And is not a slave of his drives and emotion that we all know so well how strong those are. But through chastity, we become free not to be dominated by those things. One becomes free to be loving through self-discipline, which one must acquire, practice, and maintain at every stage of life. And again, this idea that being deliberate, that being disciplined, are really essential to love. We've been told a lie in our world about love, that love is about, just feelings, and it doesn't have anything to do with being thoughtful. It's something completely beyond our control. And that really is a lie. In order to be able to love, and therefore in order to be able to express that love within marriage, within the marital embrace, to express our sexuality without making a lie out of it, then we have to live very, very generously as God has taught us. This is another incredible quotation from Pope John Paul. One cannot live a trial life or die a trial death. You can't say, well, I'm going to give death a try, I'll see if I like it, and then I'll come back. No, that's not the way it happens. You can't live a trial life. Our life is just, it's go from the get-go, and we certainly can't live a trial death. One cannot accept love on a trial basis or accept a person on trial and for a limited time. And yet that's so much of what our world tries to tell us, that we are able to try out love and try out other people, especially sexually. But in that case, it really can't be love at all, and it can't really be an authentic gift. A gift, you don't just sort of, I'm going to try to give you a gift. When you give a gift, it's given, and it's given for good, and it's given generously and with no regrets. And so that is what the virtue of chastity allows us to do. And I think this shows us that an incredible quotation from Pope John Paul shows us what's wrong with premarital sex. We live in a world that frankly doesn't really see anything wrong with it. As a matter of fact, I think many people in our culture think it's actually a positively good thing, that you would never dream of marrying somebody, for example, that you did not already have a sexual relationship with. And yet the church is telling us why that's wrong, that sexuality is that we don't try that out. We don't try out life, and we don't try out love. We make a complete gift of ourselves, and that's why that premarital sex is really contrary to the Christian understanding of that. Why is the church against premarital sexual relations? Question 407 says, because she would like to protect love. A person can give someone no greater gift than himself. What greater gift could you ever give to someone than that gift that is physically demonstrated in the marital sexual act? That is it's the image of the greatest gift, that gift of self. And so we have to see that even though people maybe take these relationships very seriously, they have really sort of lost that connection with love in its truest and deepest sense, that love that is gift, self-giving, and freely given. For many, that reality has already been a part of their lives, of premarital sexual relations. How can you live a Christian in that case? That's question 408. And I would encourage you to seek, spiritual help and guidance. That kind of relationship cannot be part of an authentic, Christian life. It would have to come to an end. We would have to begin again, and recognize where we have, failed to live and to love generously and in a self-giving way. One of the things where you can sort of see that there's a problem with this is that most of those relationships, you can see that they're not what the church has in mind about a marital relationship, because most of them, frankly, have some sort of exit strategy, some way to get out, or some thought that this is going to come to end at some day, and also the fear of the relationship being fruitful, the fear of a child. And if the fear of a child is a part of a sexual relationship, then there's something sort of very fundamentally wrong here, because that sort of love is supposed to be fruitful, and that fruitfulness is really supposed to be a source of joy and not of fear. Well, let's look at some other offenses against the virtue of chastity that are very common and that many people struggle with. And this is not to bring them up in a way, to condemn anyone at all, but just to recognize them and to learn how God wants to heal us and to bring us from these. There is the question 409, is masturbation offense against love? Masturbation is an offense against love because it makes the excitement of sexual pleasure an end in itself, and especially a selfish end in itself. It is sort of almost, I would say, a symbol of selfishness, a physical living out and manifestation of selfishness. And so, coupled often and brought about by pornography, sometimes masturbation becomes very addictive. And so, I would encourage you to seek spiritual counsel from a good confessor or a good spiritual director in order to find your way free of this. Again, so that you might be free, so that you might be free to give yourself away in a loving relationship within marriage. I mentioned before also pornography, often very related to masturbation. Pornography, again, we live in a world, a very pornographic world, a world in which people are seen and used sexually as objects for our own pleasure or for gratification, and really separate from any concept of gift of self or for their self-good. And that's what's so fundamentally wrong with pornography. And so even though we live in a world that's sort of saturated with this, the Christian that heart that really seeks to love would seek to turn away from pornography and its making an object of other human beings.